let's talk about nicotine patches. Yeah, again, nicotine. I'm not talking about what comes along it. I'm talking about, well, I mean, what comes along in a cigarette, the extras, I'm talking about plain nicotine, the plant. Remember, again, is a plant. Sometimes we forget that things don't come from God knows where, they come from nature. Even if we synthesize them, they are still coming from nature. So, yeah. So, yeah, look, and another day we're going to talk about what really long COVID is anyway. But yeah, it's kind of complex to explain, so I'm gonna dedicate a whole video. So yeah, I mean, people are using nicotine patches, nicotine, all sorts of things, and amazingly, weirdly enough, the symptoms disappear. Why is that? What's happening with these? And it's just crazy. So the nicotinic hypothesis was formulated quickly, and months after, many universities and so on, and studies in China. Smokers were underrepresented in patients hospitalized with this new disease, let's call it. This is for another chapter, yeah? Doctors were seeing fewer worse cases in the smoking population, and, that was like weird, and they didn't understand why. So, the ACE2 receptors express on the outside of cells in our airways, like a key fitting into a lock. But because what they called, the flying virus was often accompanied by inflammatory component, it was hypothesized, that, this virus could also bind to another type of receptor, nicotinic acetylcholine receptors, or NACHRS for short. These receptors usually interact with the neurotransmitter acetylcholine, but molecules in some snake venoms and strains of the rabies virus, for instance, can also bind them because of a short sequence of amino acids. And the sequence was shared, the team that actually were studying it, by the spike protein that the virus displayed in the surface like a crown of thorns. This new virus could, in theory, displace acetylcholine from NACHRS and cause damage. So basically, nicotine binds to the same receptors very, very strongly. So smokers were protected from the more severe effects from this flying thing. The spike protein wanted to access this lock, but nicotine keys were already jumped in there and they were in a hurry to leave. Hence, the otherwise unsound proposal in the teams, basically, that nicotine might be suggested as a potential preventive agent against this infection. So, yeah, they highlighted that nicotine, they keep calling it a drug. Again, is a plant. Nicotine is a plant. The fact that they processed it, put other things that should not be there in there is a different story. But yeah, so usually they use nicotine patches, mainly because it's like one of the main ways, unless you grow it yourself, that you can access pure nicotine on its own without much crap going on there. And when you're going it transdermally, for instance, it's going to be absorbed into the blood, without the oxidative smoking part of it. So at this point, basically, these reports that smokers were underrepresented, basically, and when they saw this, they thought about the nicotine patch. Basically, there's many people trying it. Nicotine patches have typically been tested in smokers who want to quit. Their safety in non-smokers is far less certain. On the other hand, um, some people with what they call long COVID, again, report that nicotine patches clear their symptoms, while others say that symptoms worsened. The worsened part of things, I believe, is a hurt reaction, die-off reaction, however you want to call it, where you're removing toxins and there's an inflammatory response, basically. So, yeah. In this water, however, weight bearers of hope seem ready to go with the science and try it. Basically, what they call long, this flying thing, is a mass layered on top of a web of suffering people. They do not know what's going on with them. They don't understand what the hell is going on. What I believe it is, there we go. It's a spike on radiation that basically just makes the whole system crash, making the mast cells of the immune system go high wire and causing constant inflammation. So very similar to what happens with Lyme disease, uh, basically, which is more or less the same. Depending on how toxic you were and how bad the flare is, you're gonna have more or less symptoms, or that's how it is. It's like the spark that makes everything crash. And when it does, same as with Lyme disease, you start flaring infections that you had already because your immune system cannot cope anymore, and so on and on and on. That's what I believe it is. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, it's very interesting. There's a lot of information about it, and it's like a life changing thing for people with this. There's a lot of info if you want to research about it. But yeah, something unexpected and amazing, no? So it will work as treatment. Again, the working theory process is that when the spike protein stem becomes lodged into nicotinic receptors, it might remain protected from the body's natural enzymatic breakdown processes. The top portion of the spike, the part of ACE2 affinity, could be left exposed to irritate mast cells, potentially triggering cascading inflammation. So again, like in Lyme, mast cell activation syndrome, which is hell on earth. Like it really is. Nicotine has a higher affinity for these same receptors than the spike protein, let's say. When administered, nicotine might easily bump the spike protein out of its lodged position, making it available for enzymatic digestion and elimination. So practitioners describe it simply. Nicotine comes along and displaces the spike from its receptor, and that's that, which is great. Therefore, the mast cells, or let's say, have nothing to attack, so the inflammation starts lowering and they calm down, which is fantastic, right? So rethink nicotine. The therapeutic approach also invites us to consider our assumptions about nicotine itself. The substance creates tolerance, meaning the body increases receptors over time, but some researchers argue this is distinct from true addiction. Interestingly, some animal studies have suggested that when given free access to both nicotine and sugar, subjects preferably choose sugar, which some interpret as evidence that nicotine might be less addictive than commonly believed, but it's the sugar in it that is the addictive part in it. So, I mean, in cigarettes, right? For patients requiring extended treatment, L-theanine might serve as an exit strategy. This amino acid has calming effects and works by reducing acetylcholine receptors, potentially helping to reverse the tolerance that nicotine creates. But yeah, so a border connection. This therapy sits within a larger picture of environmental medicine. The conversion around nicotine therapy often intersects with mold illness, as mycotoxin exposure might shift the immune system towards relying more heavily on mast cells. The same cells could become aggravated by free floating spike protein. Patients dealing with both mold exposure and long free flying thing might find that addressing both issues together yields better results than treating either in isolation. Some practitioners have reported that patients experiencing unexpected improvements in conditions like Ehlers-Danlos syndrome while using nicotine patches, Lyme disease, and so on. So researchers have explored how venom-like compounds might disrupt collagen formation and degrade existing collagen, potentially offering one explanation for the stretchy skin and joint hypermobility characteristic of EDS, for instance. By removing these compounds from their receptors, some patients have reported improvements in their connective tissue symptoms. So, that more research is needed to understand the condition, which again is the same like as what I said before, toxicity. No, that's it. A bad gut, toxicity, and a terrain that's been nuts, flaring infections, and so on and on and on. Same as with Lyme disease, once again. So the exploration of nicotine as a potential long flying thing treatment represents a shift in how some practitioners think about this compound and offers potential hope for those suffering from persistent post flying source thing situation. For those who have been struggling with dysautonomia, mast cell activation syndrome, and all these manifestations, nicotine patches might represent an avenue worth exploring. And yeah, I have not been trying it myself, although I kept smoking. I do smoke like as less toxic as possible cigarettes, obviously, but they help. I mean, and even though I removed everything else, I kept this. And yeah, I mean, obviously, when they put so much effort into removing something, is because there's something good in it, and the other way around, right? Obviously, I would love to be able to plant it and to have, proper one, and also, yeah, deliberate in different ways that are less harmful, but it works. It works fantastically well. So yeah, there's more research about it. There's other information about which patches to use, dosages, and so on. Some practitioners are very well informed about it. So if you're lucky enough to have one that knows about this, let them know. So and that'll be it. So yeah, thank you for watching. Please subscribe. I'll see you next time.